From grief to justice, this police K-9 dog changed everything after his master's death. When Officer Paul's tragic death leaves his loyal K-9 partner, Echo, devastated, the dog's unwavering bond with his handler leads him to uncover a shocking conspiracy within the police department. As Lisa, Paul's widow, and Echo join forces to expose the truth, they find themselves targeted by dangerous mercenaries. With danger closing in, Echo must confront his deepest grief to protect Lisa and bring the corrupt officers to justice. In a final, heart-stopping showdown, Echo's loyalty and skill are put to the ultimate test, revealing a conspiracy no one saw coming. Officer Paul Miller sat still in the unmarked car, the faint hum of the engine the only sound in the quiet of the night. Next to him, Echo, his German Shepherd partner, was alert, ears raised and eyes scanning the street with perfect focus. Echo had been with Paul for 5 years, and there wasn't a more trusted K-9 team in the department. Paul checked his watch. They'd been parked here for hours, waiting. The target, a notorious gang leader, was supposed to meet someone tonight. All they had to do was stay hidden, gather intel, and call in backup when the time was right. But something fell off. The longer they stayed, the more Paul's instincts told him they were being watched. He glanced at Echo. The dog's eyes were fixed on the shadows down the street, muscles tense. Paul could feel his own heartbeat quicken. "Stay sharp, boy," Paul whispered under his breath. Echo's tail barely moved, but his stance grew more rigid. The night air seemed to hold its breath. Suddenly, the silence was shattered. Echo growled low, his body bracing. Paul's hand went to the radio, but before he could speak, the side window shattered. The sharp crack of gunfire cut through the night. Echo barked fiercely, leaping over Paul to shield him. More shots rang out from all directions, the air thick with danger. "Get down," Paul shouted, grabbing Echo and pulling him behind the car's door. Gunfire continued to hit the vehicle, sending sparks flying as the bullets tore into metal. Paul's mind raced, but his movements were calm. He knew Echo had his back. The dog's training kicked in. He leaped from cover, dodging bullets as he lunged for one of the shooters. Paul pulled his weapon, his aim steady. He fired back, taking down one attacker before ducking again. Echo was locked in a battle of his own, tearing into the legs of a man who had tried to creep closer. Paul couldn't help but admire the dog's bravery. But then, an explosion of pain. Paul felt the sharp burn in his side as a bullet found its mark. He gritted his teeth, but it was too much. He slumped against the car, his vision blurring. Echo turned toward him, eyes wide with confusion. "Stay back, boy," Paul whispered, trying to push the dog away. But Echo wouldn't leave. He nuzzled his handler's face, barking urgently, but Paul's body was already growing colder. His hand reached out to touch Echo's for one last time. "Good boy, you've been the best." The words came out barely a whisper, but Echo understood. He laid his head on Paul's chest, but it was too late. Paul's body was still, his grip loose. The light in his eyes had faded. Echo stood there, unmoving, as the chaos around them died down. The gunfire had stopped, but the world felt different. Paul was gone, and the dog was left alone, standing guard over his fallen partner. Days passed, and the department made arrangements for Paul's funeral. Echo was retired. No one could bear to see the dog in the field anymore. But Echo didn't care about that. He didn't want to leave the memories of his handler behind. For days, he stayed in the corner of his kennel, refusing to eat, drink, or even look at anyone. Lisa, Paul's wife, didn't know how to handle it either. She understood the bond between Paul and Echo, but she hadn't prepared for the loneliness that came with losing them both. The house was quieter now, and every room felt emptier. Echo lay in the corner of the living room, staring blankly at the door. He wouldn't even go outside. Lisa tried to reach out, calling his name softly, but Echo barely responded. He was broken, and she couldn't fix him. One afternoon, she found herself in the attic, sorting through Paul's things. It was part of her effort to try and make sense of the void left by his death. But when she opened an old file box, she came across something unusual. There, at the bottom of the box, was an unfinished case file. It was Paul's handwriting on the cover, but there was something off about it. She couldn't put her finger on it, but the words felt wrong, like they didn't belong. She flipped open the file, reading through the notes. It seemed like a simple robbery investigation, but then she found something strange, a series of numbers, written over and over again. And at the end of the page was a name. She didn't recognize it, but something in her gut told her it meant more than she could understand. She glanced at Echo, who was still lying motionless by the window. "What do you think, boy?" she asked, but the dog didn't respond. For the first time since Paul's death, Lisa felt the stirrings of something. Determination, maybe. There was something Paul had left behind, and she needed to know what it was. For herself, for Paul, and for Echo. Lisa set the case file down on the table, its unfinished pages a stark reminder of the questions Paul never had the chance to answer. As she skimmed through the notes again, she tried to piece together what Paul had been working on. Echo remained still, his eyes unblinking as he watched her. For a moment, Lisa considered putting the file aside, letting it go. But that strange feeling inside her, the one that had pushed her to open the box in the attic, wouldn't let her stop. She picked up the phone and called the department. "Hello, Detective Harris?" "Yes, this is Lisa Miller. I was hoping you could tell me more about the case Paul was working on before." Her voice caught her throat, but she quickly recovered. "The one with the gang leader." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "I'm sorry, Lisa. I can't give you that information. It's still under investigation, and Paul's involvement." Harris trailed off. Lisa could hear the discomfort in his voice, but she wasn't about to let this go. "Please, Harris, you owe it to him. Just a few more details." "I can't. You'll need to speak with Chief Lawson," he replied, and the call ended. Lisa stared at the phone for a long moment. Chief Lawson. She knew the name, but hadn't given it much thought before. Now, she felt a sudden, sharp need to learn more about him, about the people who had been close to Paul in his last days. Turning back to Echo, Lisa gave him a soft smile. "Well, boy, looks like we have some work to do." Echo's ears perked up slightly at the sound of her voice, but he didn't get up. Lisa placed her hand on his head, the fur soft under her fingers. There was a strange quiet between them, and she wondered how much Echo truly understood. For days, Lisa kept at it. She pored over the files, retraced Paul's steps, and slowly began to notice something, patterns she hadn't seen before. Every time she found something suspicious, Echo would react. His body would tense, and he'd stare at certain pieces of paper as though he could sense something deeper, something hidden in the words. At first, Lisa thought it was a coincidence, but after a while, she couldn't ignore the connection. There was one evening, when she was reading through a report about a suspect's criminal activity, that Echo's reaction stopped her in her tracks. He was sitting at her feet, his eyes locked on the page she was reading. Lisa couldn't understand why it bothered him so much. She hadn't even noticed the name until that moment. Chief Lawson. Her heart skipped a beat. She looked down at Echo, who had stood up, his body tense, ears forward. Lisa's thoughts raced. Was it possible? Was Paul on the trail of someone so close to the force? The next day, Lisa decided to pay a visit to Chief Lawson's office. Echo trotted quietly behind her, his eyes darting from side to side. As they walked through the building, Lisa could feel the eyes of the officers on her, a mix of sympathy and something else she couldn't quite place. Lawson's office was on the top floor, the door guarded by 2 officers. When Lisa knocked, the door opened, and she was greeted by the chief himself, a tall man with a firm handshake and a smile that seemed practiced. "What can I do for you, Mrs. Miller?" Lawson asked, motioning for her to sit. "I'm here about Paul's last case. I think he was getting close to something," Lisa began, watching his face closely for any signs of recognition. Lawson's smile faltered for just a moment, but it was enough. Lisa noticed. "I'm afraid I can't share any details," he said quickly, his tone polite but firm. "It's all confidential." Lisa stared at him, her mind working quickly. "I see. I understand, but I believe Paul was on the right track, and I need to know what he found, for his sake." Lawson's expression tightened, and for a moment, Lisa thought she saw something in his eyes. Fear? Or was it guilt? But it was gone so fast, she couldn't be sure. "Mrs. Miller, please. You should move on. There's nothing more to be found," Lawson said, his voice taking on a tone of finality. Lisa stood up, her gaze never leaving his. "I don't think you're telling me everything, Chief Lawson. And I'm not stopping until I know the truth." As she turned to leave, Echo growled softly, his low rumble barely audible but enough to send a shiver down her spine. Lisa's thoughts were interrupted by a sudden crash outside the door. She froze. Echo was already moving, his body alert. The officers outside seemed startled, but none of them acted fast enough. Before Lisa could ask what was happening, she heard footsteps, too many footsteps, and a few moments later, the door slammed shut behind her, trapping them inside. She grabbed Echo's collar, her breath quickening. "We need to go, boy." Echo let out a sharp bark, and without warning, he lunged toward the door, knocking it open with his powerful body. The officers outside shouted in confusion, but Echo was already in motion. Lisa followed close behind, heart pounding as they ran down the hall. At the end of the corridor, she heard voices. The footsteps grew louder, closer. Someone was following them. Lisa's mind raced as she turned a corner, Echo leading the way. The danger was real now, and she knew it. There was no turning back. When they reached the stairwell, Lisa paused for a moment, catching her breath. Echo stood beside her, ready to act at any moment. "I should have listened to Paul," Lisa muttered, her voice tight with frustration. "But now, I'm the only one who can finish this." With Echo by her side, Lisa was ready to face whatever came next. The game had changed, and she was no longer just the widow of a fallen officer. She was someone who was determined to uncover the truth. As they exited the building, Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. But with Echo at her side, she was no longer afraid. Echo had found his purpose again, and together, they would stop whoever was behind Paul's death, no matter what it took. The air was thick with tension as Lisa and Echo made their way through the darkening streets. They had gathered the evidence, connected the dots, and uncovered a trail that led straight to Chief Lawson, the very man who had claimed to be Paul's friend. But now that the truth was close, Lisa knew they were in danger. She glanced at Echo, his eyes scanning every corner, every alley, as they walked. The dog was alert, more focused than ever. Lisa's pulse quickened. They weren't just walking home anymore. They were on the verge of something far bigger. The feeling was confirmed a few blocks from her apartment. A van pulled up behind them, its engine humming too loudly to be a coincidence. Before Lisa could react, the doors flew open, and two masked men jumped out, each holding a weapon. Echo snarled, stepping protectively in front of Lisa. "Move!" one of the men shouted. But Echo wasn't backing down. The first man lunged at Lisa, but before he could reach her, Echo was on him, his teeth sinking into the man's arm. The man screamed, dropping his weapon as Echo knocked him to the ground. The second attacker pulled his gun, aiming it at Lisa. Without hesitation, Echo charged at him, knocking the gun out of his hand. The man staggered back, trying to regain his balance, but Echo didn't stop. He pinned the man to the ground, growling fiercely, while Lisa stepped back, breathless but unharmed. For a moment, it seemed like everything had stopped. But then, Echo released his hold on the man, who scrambled to his feet and ran off. The other attacker was already retreating, clutching his arm as he disappeared into the night. Lisa stood there, shaking but alive. "Echo, you saved my life." Her voice was hoarse, but she couldn't stop the gratitude in her heart. The dog's eyes softened for a brief moment before he returned to his alert stance, scanning the street again. "I don't know who's behind this, but they're not going to stop us," Lisa muttered, determination hardening her voice. The next few days passed in a blur. Lisa's phone buzzed constantly with messages, some warnings, some threats, but she refused to back down. She had come too far to quit now. With Echo at her side, she pressed on, determined to finish what Paul had started. Her breakthrough came when she managed to track down one of the mercenaries from the attack. The man was holed up in a seedy motel just outside the city. Lisa wasn't sure what she'd find there, but Echo's instincts told him they were on the right track. Together, they infiltrated the motel, Echo leading the way. The building was eerily quiet, but the air was thick with danger. Lisa's heart raced as they moved deeper into the building, every step feeling like it could be their last. They found the mercenary in one of the rooms, his face pale as he stared at them with wide eyes. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice shaking. Lisa didn't need to say anything. Echo stepped forward, growling low in his throat. The man took a step back, his eyes darting around for an escape, but there was nowhere to go. "You're going to tell me who sent you," Lisa said firmly. The man hesitated, but the fear in his eyes was unmistakable. Finally, he spoke. "It's Lawson. He's behind it all. He's paying us to take out anyone who gets too close. You're next." Lisa's heart dropped. She had suspected Lawson, but hearing it confirmed made everything even more real. The chief, a man Paul had trusted, was the one behind the attacks. And now, Lisa knew they had to stop him before it was too late. Lisa and Echo didn't waste any time. They knew the clock was ticking. Lawson was dangerous, and now that he knew they were onto him, there was no telling what he would do next. But Lisa was done running. She was ready to confront him, once and for all. Their target was a warehouse on the outskirts of town. Echo had picked up Lawson's scent, and Lisa knew that this was it. She could feel the weight of everything they had been through bearing down on her. But with Echo at her side, she wasn't afraid. As they approached the warehouse, Lisa noticed the guards stationed at every entry point. They weren't going to make it easy, but Echo knew exactly what to do. With a low growl, he moved in, taking down the first guard silently. Lisa followed his lead, moving quickly and quietly as they worked their way deeper into the building. It wasn't long before they encountered the rest of Lawson's men. Echo was a blur of motion, taking them down one by one. His training was evident in every move, and Lisa felt a rush of pride for the dog who had once been lost in grief, but was now fully alive, fighting with everything he had. Finally, they reached the central room of the warehouse. Lawson was there, standing with his back to them, talking to someone on the phone. When he turned around and saw Lisa and Echo, his face went pale. He hissed, "You should have stayed out of this." But Lisa wasn't afraid. She stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "You're done, Lawson. It's over." For a moment, Lawson looked like he was going to run, but then he glanced at Echo. The dog was already moving, his body tense, ready to strike. "Stop!" Lawson yelled, his voice cracking. But it was too late. Echo lunged at him, knocking him to the ground. In a matter of seconds, Lawson was subdued, his plans in ruins. Lisa stood over him, her eyes cold. "Justice will be served, no matter who you are." With Lawson taken care of and the case finally solved, Lisa felt a sense of closure. The truth had come out, and the corrupt officer had been exposed. Echo, once lost in his grief, had found his purpose again. He had protected her, fought beside her, and helped bring justice to Paul's memory. And now, the dog was no longer a shadow of his former self. He was a canine with a renewed sense of duty, and together, they would continue helping those in need. As they walked away from the warehouse, Lisa could feel the weight of everything they had been through lifting off her shoulders. She wasn't just the widow of a fallen officer anymore. She was a woman who had fought for the truth, and with Echo by her side, she would never back down. Their bond was stronger than ever, and together, they had found peace.